So as Steve said, hi, my name is Laura Byrne, and I'm going to be talking to you about teaching your clients or yourself Gutenberg, aka the block editor. To give you a little bit of my background, I have been using WordPress every day of my life since March of 2006. I've written content for well over 100 WordPress websites, some of them highly viral websites with millions of visitors daily to those particular sites. So I am constantly creating content. I understand how important it is for it to be well laid out, easily done. Time is money, as the saying goes. Also here to let you know that this is not specifically getting into things like PHP or HTML, CSS, how do you code a block, knowing JavaScript. Shout out to the people for whom that is their skill set. It is not my particular skill set, but don't let anybody tell you you're lightweight or don't know what you're doing, because that isn't your skill set. Content creators absolutely have a place in this WordPress universe. True story, I went from hating Gutenberg when I first saw it to loving it about 18 months afterwards. When I tried it in its early days, had a lot of glitches in it. There were a lot of barriers to getting things to do what you needed them to do. And Gutenberg right now is very much night and day from what it was in its early days. So if you tried it back in, say, like 2017, 2018, 100%, I get it. It was super glitchy back then, but right now it works amazingly. As Steve said, I currently work for Automatic as a technical account manager for this special projects team. And just prior to that, I was working for Bet Hannon Business Websites, where we were building accessible websites with Gutenberg, the block editor, every single day. It was all that we were building. So you absolutely can build something gorgeous and accessible using Gutenberg, the block editor. And if you want to catch up with me anywhere on the web, you can always catch up with me at New Yorker Laura, Twitter, the WordPress forums, pretty much everywhere. That's where you can find me. That's who I am. All right, so let's get into it here. One of the first things I think we can do when we're teaching people the block editor is it's actually not a bad time for a little bit of re-education. What I find over time is that, whoever was initially taught how to use the website, they may have moved on, they have a different job description, whatever it is, and you find that some of that like institutional knowledge is actually not really been institutionalized, and there are some gaps in knowledge. So before you even get into starting to teach people the block editor itself, what you might find you might want to do is reiterate a bit of good, consistent web practice. And everybody loves that web practice, especially when they realize it ties in very, very intrinsically to SEO. Everybody's concerned about SEO. It also has incredible accessibility benefits, which also, hey, it's what we all should be doing, and SEO and accessibility are tied hand in hand. So it's great to have those good practices. One of the very first things I find is that a lot of folks don't realize what headers are. They tend to bold and italicize text. They tend to manually increase sizes of things when really they want to be using a header, H2s, H3s, H4s, obviously in canonical order. So it's a great opportunity to take that moment to educate or re-educate your clients about that. And there are a couple of really awesome videos out there for it if you need some backup on that. The other thing I think it's a great opportunity to do is revisit what the difference between posts and pages are and how those functions. A lot of folks are very confused about like how things work. I see sometimes people over updating pages and I'm like, oh God, that should really be a post. So definitely an opportunity to do it. An analogy that I like using an awful lot of the time, it certainly works in English. I'm not sure if this translates into other languages, but in English at least, I try to tell people, think about pages as pages in a book. You wouldn't change pages that quickly in an item versus posts. I tell people to think of it as post-it notes. And that seems to have them keep it straight in their head as to what each of those items is used for. So that's a great little content tip for you. Other thing I like to try to reiterate with people is letting them know what alt text is on images. It's a great opportunity to have them understand what it is. A lot of people don't even realize what alt text is or how to use it. And the great thing about the block editor is that it is super easy to do alt text. And what's even better is you are able to do in the block editor alt text per instance. In other words, if you are reusing a photo across your site in a couple of different ways, the relevancy of that photo might change from page to page to page. And now with the block editor, it's super easy to put alt text on an image that is relevant to the page you're on, which may be entirely different from another page it appears on. So it's a great opportunity to reiterate that and to demonstrate that feature. Short paragraphs is just sort of another thing. Sometimes you have folks writing War and Peace and you're like, online, we may want to chop that up. And the last thing I like to try to reiterate with folks is bullet pointed items. If you're ever talking about things and you go beyond 3 items, hit it to a bullet pointed list. It's much more digestible on a website, and the block editor makes it super, super easy to deal with. So those are just a couple things I get into before I actually get into the teaching of how to use the editor. So getting into it. The first thing I want to tell people is adding the content. Adding the content on the block editor. It gets added in with a plus sign. I always try to point out to them that the plus signs end up in a couple different places on the website. What I usually like to do is I tell them if they get lost or confused to just hit a return, add their content with a plus to the bottom of their content, and then drop drag it to where they need it. Sometimes things get a little jammed up in the middle. I find it's cleaner and easier sometimes to have people add their additional content to the bottom of whatever they're working on, and then to drag it into where they actually need it. Another kind of thing that I like to tell them about working with the block editor is to highlight how the directory works. And I'll do a demo on this at the end with a specific website in mind. Highlight how the directory works. Show them that they can either search for a block by name or bring up the entire editor itself so that they can find everything at once. Depending on your client, they may find that a little overwhelming. So I tell them, don't get, too in the weeds there, but to take a look at it. Top bar, I'll talk about that in a second, how to demo items on the top bar. There are a lot of useful items at the very, very top that people don't know how it works. And I like to show them things like the breadcrumb trail at the top, word count feature that a lot of people don't know that's there, and also a checker that will make sure you're not having any kind of SEO misses. And then the last thing I like to do with people when they have the block editor is I like to make sure that folks know that they should have some sort of playground afterwards to check things out and to go back and look and see, basically have a place where they can play around and go, what does this button do? And I'll talk about that towards the end of it, as I said. All right. So there we go. Hold on one second. Let me just go back on that. Okay, there we go. One of the things that I think is the easiest thing to do is start off, as I said, with the header and the paragraph blocks. Everybody has them. It's the one item that is the same across everybody's website, no matter what. You're going to be hard pressed to find a website that wouldn't be dealing with header and paragraph blocks. So what I usually like to do is I like going to somebody's About Us or Services Offered page, and I like to try to recreate that for them in real time using the block editor. I find it's very relevant to them. It's a page that sometimes they're like, oh, we should revisit this, we should update our content on it. Sometimes the content's gotten a little stale. So that's a great page that you could use and demo in real time how the block editor works, because it immediately has relevancy to the people that you are teaching how to use the block editor. It's a great jumping off point. After that, the next thing that I like doing is, like I said, I just grab that content and I'll throw it into a new page so they can see how easy the content can come in. From there, I like demoing the bold, the italic, the alignment. I'll work into bullet points. If they don't have their headers set up correctly, I show them correctly at that point how to do it and how easy it is to shift from, say, an H2 to an H4 and get things all correct. And it's a really great time to show them how to move things up and down, and let them take a look at what is on the main bar. And in fact, let me just pull up, give me like 1 second just to sort of pull up a website that I have. Give me 1 second here. I can show you what I'm doing with this. All right, let me just grab the page here. Wait 1 second for it to load. So what I'm talking about up here is what I like to acquaint them with at this point are the buttons that are up here and what they do. Let me grab a page that is actually in use so you can kind of see how something like that might work. A lot of people don't realize what the buttons across the top do, and they're excellent.
Laura?
Yeah,
Quick
sorry.
question. We're looking at PowerPoint. Should we be looking at the Gutenberg editor?
Yeah, let me unshare this. Hang on. If I kill that, give me 1 second. Let me unshare and then reshare, and that would probably do it. Hang on. Give me 1 minute.
Yep.
There you go.
PowerPoint.
Return to the. I don't know that I have control, Steve. I think you ended up back with control. Let's see if. There we go. Hang on. Share and here we go. You're looking at the back end now?
Yeah. Now we're in WordPress.
Great. Sorry. There we go. I think I lost control when we let some folks in from the lobby. Okay. So what I like to show people at this stage of the game is the buttons up here across the top, that you can add content with the plus sign up here. A lot of people sometimes think that you can only add it, you know, if you come down here and you'd hit a return, and then you will get the opportunity to add content down the bottom. But the plus sign, really, you can add it anywhere. The other thing that I find is a lot of people don't know what these other buttons up here do. For one, this info button is awesome. I don't know if people realize this, but you get some amazing information up here at the top. Word count, character count, particularly if you're worried about that for SEO, is important. The other thing it lets you know is if all of your headers are in the right order, particularly if you get into some really in-depth content. Sometimes it's really easy just to do something out of order. And if you've thrown something out of order, you'll get a red alert right here to let you know that. And like I said, it gives you a summary of what you're doing. The other thing that's really cool up here is what I call the breadcrumb trail, the outline. And it lets you see what you're getting very quickly. And you can zip down to a given block here very easily, particularly when it's a block that's a little more subtle. Like, for example, this page has a separator block. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to really get in there and deal with that particular block. I find the easiest way to grab it is to use the breadcrumb trail here and then click on it, and you'll zip right down to it, and you'll be right on top of the controls of it. So that's a really good trick that I use in that particular instance. So let me flip back into the PowerPoint. Let me know in a second if you don't see it. Give me 1 second. And let me reshare again. Here we go. And cool, are we back on the PowerPoint?
Yes, we are.
Great. So that's one of the things that I think is very helpful. Get up there and show them everything that you can do at the very top. A lot of people tend to skip it and they don't realize the control that they have up there. The next thing I like to try to get into with folks after I just get into basic text is to show them images. If there are images on their web page, it's a great time to pull it in. A lot of clients I find don't tend to wrap text around photos because in the classic editor it could be super clunky, it could be very difficult to resize. It could knock things out of proportion really easily. In the block editor, it is almost impossible to distort an image and knock it out of proportion. Most people love that feature. The other thing that they keep improving on it every day is that there is a clipping mask, depending upon what your theme is, that you can do some really nice overlays. You can crop photos into circles, change the focus on them, that you just didn't have that kind of control on classic editor. And I find that folks, once they see that, they instantaneously are like, whoa, I didn't have this control before, and it gives them really awesome buy-in to switching into the block editor. The other thing that also I find at this point, like I said, so start with the words, bring in the photos. After that, a lot of times I'll deliberately put a photo down the bottom of the content, and then at this point I'll take the opportunity and I'll move it up and down for them and show the up-down arrows in the block editor. It is pretty much life-changing for most people who are used to classic editor, that they don't realize that they can move things as easily as they can. So many people in classic editor are so used to putting in an image, going, nope, wrong place, have to delete it, do it again. Oh, still wrong, delete it, do it another time. And they get very frustrated very quickly. The fact that you can move things so fast in the block editor and preview it in real time, that's a big win for folks. The really great thing, though, and I think this is probably the best thing that has come along with the block editor, is that you can put items into either a Word doc or a Google Doc, format it with links. You can put in bullet points. You can have your headers, everything arranged ahead of time. Highlight, copy, paste, and put your content into your page or your post, and it is exactly what you want. You know, if you had tried that with classic editor, you would end up with a big old mess. You know, highlight, copying, and pasting out of Word into classic editor is a good recipe for disaster and a lot of wonky coding. But you can do that using the block editor, and the results are fantastic. It particularly works with groups that are collaborating on articles. They can do their collaboration ahead of time on whatever their platforms are and then just bring in the finished version. It makes life a lot easier for them. In a previous job, I worked for a large number of faith-based clients. I remember demoing highlight, copying, and pasting out of Word at one point, and I literally got hallelujahs as I was showing them how to do it. The one thing that people do need to know, and I realize that sometimes folks have gotten confused on this, whereas you can have a Word doc or a Google Doc and you can have an image lined up in those documents, you can't highlight, copy, and paste those into the images, is what I'm speaking about, into the WordPress editor, because it's still that image is still not into the media gallery. It's still attached to your local machine. So it only really works with text. It does not work with images. So that's definitely something just to let folks know about. After that, I try to pick blocks that are relevant to each person. The ones that I find are probably the most relevant to them are the separator, the spacer, and the PDF blocks. Separator block is basically just an HR. It's a line, and depending upon how your theme is, it can be either very long or short. Just to be able to put in sort of that visual rest, it gives you a break that is something other than white space per se. A lot of people love to be able to do that. And a lot of folks, when you had the classic editor, didn't even really know you would have it in there, even though with Tiny MCE you would have it if you hit the kitchen sink option. A lot of folks, it just kind of passed them right on by, so this is a great feature for them. The other item that I find is a big win is the spacer block. I don't know if anybody else has come across this, sites where somebody has hit return about 16 times trying to get the spacing right in the content area, and then they're still not happy with it, and it sure doesn't provide a great user experience. But now with the spacer block, it operates kind of like a window shade. You can just give yourself a couple pixels more room here and there, and it works out beautifully. I find it works the best on things like staff pages when you have photos and bios and you have somebody who's got a really long bio, they've written War and Peace, and then the next person's got like their picture in 2 sentences, and you're like, oh great, I've got to go figure out the spacing on this. The spacer block will save you on that every single time. Other item that I find people love, again, big win for them, is the way that the file block works, which is for PDFs. And it gives you automatically the option to either view a PDF or download it. People love that. So often, depending upon what they were previously using, anytime you hit a PDF, you got stuck downloading it. It's like, I don't want to download it, I just wanted to see it. That gives you the option. So it's a big win to demo that particular block. I find people get buy-in on that very, very quickly. And that is not to say there are not a couple of blocks that are still problematic. I'm here to tell you that the button block is pretty irksome. It is a little difficult sometimes to get exactly what you want with it. When you're using the button block, I would recommend using the breadcrumb trail, or you frequently find you cannot catch it well enough to center it, align it, or put a link into it. Gallery block, it's okay, it's not great. I find it needs a plugin to go with it because the gallery block, for whatever reason, doesn't come with lightbox functions. I'm not really clear how it's a gallery if it doesn't have a lightbox function built into it. But the gallery blocks are great. You just need to have a plugin to work with it. So some of them can be a little bit annoying, but from personal opinion, I find that I am much easier. Back that up a minute. It's much easier for me to create content in the block editor quickly and efficiently than definitely in Classic Editor, and for sure some of the page editors page builders I've had to use over the years. You know, there's some great functionality. People who love page builders like Elementor or Beaver Builder or whatever, fantastic, you love it, great. I don't want to knock your product, but I know for me personally, I find I'm faster in the block editor, and for me it's very helpful. Last but not least, the biggest item I find that to get people to do buy-in on the block editor is to create what they call the reusable block. Everybody's got a pain point on content that they have to create again and again and again, and they're just tired of it. A couple of my clients were some performing arts websites, and they're so tired of doing things like, you know, ticket sales boilerplate or refund boilerplate that they have to put on different pages and posts continuously. It's just like, oh, geez, I got to bring this back again. With the reusable blocks, it's just basically a one-click item. I found folks instantaneously, for them, it was life-changing. They were ready to just adapt it based on that they could have multiple reusable blocks that they could use again and again and again, and be able to modify text in reusable blocks across the website. The only catch on it I do find, and they are continuously updating the block, they have done a lot of iterations on the reusable blocks since the beginning. And right now they moved where you name them. It's now getting named in the right sidebar. Personal opinion, I liked it a lot better when you could name it above the block. I know sometimes folks are like, wait, where did that functionality go? It's in the right sidebar if folks have problems with it. And then the last thing I try to do with folks is I demo the things that are most relevant to them. Like I said, the straight text, the images, some of the other blocks that I told you about, the PDF blocks, the spacer, the separator. But then after that, I pick what is relevant to them, and then I create them a little test page. I realize that, you know, for many of us, we have a sandbox site or something we can play around with. What I end up doing is I say, let's create you a page where you can play around with this a little bit and say, wonder what this does without breaking anything. I'll create a page, I'll do it a no index and no follow on that page. And I'll say, why don't we give you a test ground to play around with for a week, and you can just go through and play and see what all these things do, so they don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm messing up my staff page or whatever they're doing. They have a place to kind of feel comfortable and kind of get in the weeds and find out what everything does. So I find that is super helpful for folks to do. I also, depending upon the client that I have, the other thing that you can do is, if they don't want to play around with that on their own site, if they get a site over on WordPress.com, they can make it a private site, and they can literally make it a playground to see what kind of blocks are out there, because the blocks on .com are pretty much the same blocks that are available in native Gutenberg on .org, and it's a great way to test around and say, wonder what this does, without per se it affecting your main site. So it's a great opportunity to give somebody a playground that maybe they haven't thought about. And then the last thing, just, there are lots and lots of innate blocks within the repo. They're improving every day, but there are some really cool third-party blocks. And some of the ones that I really like are made by Stackable, Co-blocks and Atomic Blocks, but there are plenty of others out there. Those are just 3 of the ones that I have used and used frequently, and I've been super, super happy with them. And that's not to say that there aren't others, but those are just 3 of the ones that I like a lot, and I find that they're very user-friendly. I haven't needed to do a lot of extra CSS or anything on them, so if you're a solopreneur, somebody who's there working on sites by yourself, I've found them very, very accessible, very easy to deal with without having a lot of HTML or CSS skills to do tweaks and what have you to them. So just to escape here for a second, and then just to give you a little bit more of that, give me 1 second, and to reshare, hang on. So yeah, just so I have this kind of as a background, just to, if people have questions, I can kind of just demo something in real time. But that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Great job. All right, we do have a few questions.
Sure.
Am I echoing?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, there's an echo, right?
I don't hear it, but I could grab a pair of headsets real quick if that's happening.
Maybe.
Yes, you have an echo.
Give me 2 seconds. I'll grab a pair of headsets.
Did you hear me? I said you do have an echo. But
Yes,
it seems
thank you.
it's gone now.
Thank you, Nina.
Sorry, I can't get through those too quickly. I heard somebody say, is it gone now? We're not echoing any longer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Temporary glitch.
2 questions. 1 from Timothy. Do you have any recommendations for telling people the difference between categories and tags?
Oh, that's a great question. I usually try to just, I mean, categories to me are more universal, more general, versus tags get like very, very specific. What I usually do when I talk to people about categories and tags, I try to make it relatable to something they know. I used to work for an entertainment website, so I figure everybody knows TVs and movies, so it's a great kind of universal language that people can appreciate. So I used to share our philosophy of categories and tags, and then usually they can extrapolate what we did there into their own sites. So I would tell them, hey, so for us, our categories were things like movies, television, we would do the networks like ABC, NBC, CBS, and then the individual tags would be like the names of the television shows, the actors that were in the television shows, and that kind of helped them grasp a little bit more as to what to do with their own sites. So feel free to use that analogy. I find that, like I said, people, you know, we all watch TV and movies, and that was just a great way to get them to grasp that concept.
That's a great analogy. All right, Nina is asking, how do you recommend managing blocks that are available in plugins? So for instance, when a plugin is deleted or deactivated, down the road, it would be hard to manage which blocks are affected.
I mean, I don't know that that is any worse than, say, Classic Editor per se, when you're dealing with that. I mean, depending upon how you're managing websites, you know, you may have like Infinite WordPress or a similar product that you can kind of get in there and control what's updated, you know, when it's updated, how it's updated. But I haven't really found plugins affecting the block editor any more than, like, if something went bad with the plugin, it would have affected Classic Editor just as badly. I haven't had a real issue with it. I would say of the third-party plugins, like I said, I personally can recommend, having used them and been very happy with them and the support that they offer. Stackable, Co-Blocks, Atomic Blocks, and then there's another one, they recently renamed it. It used to be called Advanced Gutenberg. I can't remember right now what the new branding is on it, but they were very solid. Like, I haven't seen any huge problems with them in the repo. The other one that I think is real good, I know Bud Kraus uses them very frequently, and he's got some really great recommendations as well. But Cadence Blocks, I know that's a real favorite of Bud's. So yeah, I wouldn't say, you know, to the question, there's not a real, I don't think there's any more of a plugin problem with the block editor than with Classic Editor.
Great. Larry's asking, to overcome the problem with placing buttons, can they be placed within a table?
Yes, you can. It still does create, I'll show you what the issue is here. Let me demo this on the page here and you'll see it right away. So let me put in a button block. All right. And I'm going to go, what do I do? Okay. So here's your button block. I'm just going to pretend we've put in a link here to it, right? And now I want to center this thing. Do you see any centering? You get frustrated really quickly. Here's why. And this is where that breadcrumb trail comes in play. This is one that still irritates me. This is the top level control of it, and this is the individual control of it. What happened is they tried to make it so that you could put several buttons in a row, and in doing so, the centering function is on the very top level of the item. So you have to come up here, and now you can center it. I am waiting for the next iteration of this. I have to say, this is one of my pet peeve blocks. So that's why I said the button block is a little annoying. The best way to deal with it, you put it in and then come up here to the breadcrumb trail and make sure you get the very top level control, or you will not be able to center it. And the same thing would happen in a table. You'd be very frustrated being like, why can't I grab this thing? It probably would be a little better, but it still could be a tad frustrating on it.
Nice, thank you. Gregory is asking, how do you approach H1, H2, H3, for example, usage? He finds it, helping customers understand this is important, but he has not been able to really find a method of doing so. I
was just going to say, without, I mean, I hate to toot my own horn. I know I wrote a post for Beth Hannon Marketing when I worked there, which was called "Put down the bowls. What you really want is a header." I'll see if I can dig that one up. But what I usually tell people is, the second you are tempted to do a bold and italic, you probably want a header. I said, if it is a, you know, you're starting off a paragraph and you're going bold, italic, colon, I usually say, stop. What you want is a header. Put that in a header and then start your paragraph underneath it. That's usually the best way I find to do it. So I'll see if I can give you a link to that article that I wrote, Steve. Maybe we could do that in notes as a follow-up. But that's the best way I kind of go at it. I usually try to tell people that bold and italic belongs within a paragraph in a sparing fashion. That bold and italic ceases to become successful if it's more than 2 words, and I find that usually stops people.
Sounds good. Yeah, give me that link. We can post it. You can also post it in the meetup comments. We can add it to the video. That would be great.
Yeah, I for sure will. Yeah, it'll just take me a second till I have to go back and look it up, but yes, not a problem.
Okay. Larry and John are asking a question that I have heard over and over again, and we'd love your opinion on it. With all the improvements with Gutenberg, you know, what is the reason to continue using other page builders like Elementor or Divi? And
yeah, no, that's a great question. And as I said, I would never want to talk down those products. Like, I know there are plenty of people that love them, embrace them. One of my, a very good friend of mine has her own agency, and she loves Elementor. She is never going to move off of Elementor, and hurrah, I'm thrilled it works for her. It does not work for me. I find, personally speaking, that it slows me down. I am, without question, faster than this. But that said, there's always going to be people that like a different product, and those products are there for them. So it's kind of like, as I look at it, Macs and PCs. Some people like a Mac, some people like a PC. They're always both going to be there. There's also the issue of multi-site. If you follow Cameron Barrett on the various places where you might find him, he runs a multi-site for the Newark City school system, and he finds that he has better control in, I believe, Beaver Builder, dealing with the multi-site situations he has of a high school, several middle schools, and a multitude of elementary schools. Than he does in just the Gutenberg and native WordPress, that it's just not ready for him in multi-site yet. So yeah, no, there are definite reasons for using those page builders. And we'll see. Everybody's got a place in the ecosystem. It's not my favorite, but it's other people's favorites. So, I guess it kind of just depends upon them.
Good question. Maybe another presentation.
Yeah.
Gregory's asking when and how to use block overlays and custom fields.
Oh, great question. A lot of those will come up, third-party blocks, gorgeous overlays over in Stackable. Like, if you're looking to do that kind of work, I personally really like the Stackable third-party blocks for doing that. You have lots of control with it. So if that's what you're looking to do, that would be my personal recommendation. But there are certainly other ones out there too, if you like doing it. I find it very intuitive, and you get what's really nice too, on Stackable, they have both a free and a paid version. You'd be amazed at how much functionality you get on the free version. Like, it's really quite stunning. You can do a lot of really good work with overlays on Stackable.
Great. A couple of others.
In fact, I may even be able to show you one. I'm just thinking, I'm like, I think I use Stackable on this. Hold on a second. It's like, let me see. Bwahaha. Yeah, actually, this is all Stackable right here.
Nice.
Yeah. And I want to say this is one of their free blocks. This was not one of the pro features. So yeah.
Awesome. Gregory has another question. Do blocks allow for attributions, video, audio, images, etc.?
I mean, there's certain, I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question, but yeah, there are blocks for all kinds of things. They have, some are very specific, some are more generic. So for example, there is an embed block that maybe lets you pull things in from a variety of sources, and it will work across, you can pull in a variety of embed codes. But there's also some that are specific to certain items. Like, for example, there's a YouTube block that all you have to do is slap in the URL of the video, and it perfectly sizes it for whatever kind of screen size you're using. You don't have to put in an iframe. So it kind of depends. There's really, It's amazing. The blocks that are in there just keep changing. Like I literally at this point every like 2 months I go back in and I just have a little, you know, kind of playground, and I'm like, what's here this month? What did you do now? Like I literally just play around and going, oh wow, I didn't know that was in there. Like I just am constantly finding something new. I think the newest one that I was playing with was it Crowd Signal? I was like, what does this do? You know, just to kind of check it out. So there's always something in there that's new.
Great. John's asking, given how good Gutenberg is, why should we start with a theme? In other words, why don't we just start from a new site from scratch?
Could you repeat that, Steve? I'm not sure I understood the question.
So given how good Gutenberg is, do we need to start building a website with a theme, or should we just start from scratch?
That's a good question. I mean, it really kind of depends. I can tell you the site that I am using right here is on the Astra theme, but it was a very, very blank canvas. There are other people that, you know, like building on the Genesis framework and will start with, you know, some Genesis, you know, options. It's really, I think it's kind of up to who your developer is, who your designer is. There's a really good presentation by Beth Soderberg that she gave at, let me get the WordCamp right. I think it's WordCamp Philly in 2019. And it talks about just starting with a very, like a very blank theme, like almost like a blank canvas. I'm trying to think about how the term she used about it. I'll look it up and I'll get you a link to it. And she gives you some really good options about, you know, what you can do.
Great. Larry's asking, I believe this is true, well, when you copy and paste from Word, which was an issue in Classic Editor,
yes,
are styles now preserved in Gutenberg?
Yes, I mean, obviously, if you're using a whole bunch of like proprietary fonts, like that is not going to come over. But yeah, no, it'll preserve everything, whether you're talking bullet points, whether you're talking inline links, whether you're talking headers. The only kind of thing that I've occasionally seen mess up, and I haven't seen this happen in a while, but like famous last words, maybe it will. Sometimes if I get a unordered list, rather than it being a straight series in a bullet pointed list, I get like 20 individual bullet points, and then I got to go back and I've got to like backspace and clean it up so it's actually a list rather than like 20 like individual bullet points. I don't think I've seen that one happen in, I'm going to say, about 9 months though, so I think that was probably a temporary bug that they fixed. But yeah, no, it rarely messes up the styling. The way that I actually started to embrace using it is I had a client that we were building a website for, that part of this website was about, you know, preserving nature and whatnot. And this guy handed me the Word doc from hell. It had something like 50 links in it, 14 different fonts. I mean, it was just, you could tell they'd been using this since Microsoft XP and just adding information to it. It was a nightmare. I literally took it, I hauled it into Google Docs just to kind of clean up some of the crazy, the font choices and everything else. I think I just did like Control A, Arial, and just tried to wipe some of that out. And then I thought, all right, here goes nothing, baby. Let's see what happens. Threw it into the block editor, and I just sat there and went, oh my God, that was 3 hours of work that just went down to 10 minutes. I mean, it was great. So yeah, no, it does really preserve things, and it doesn't, you can clean up very quickly and get the content in.
Great, that's great. Last question. John is asking if you can recommend a good book about using Gutenberg.
I will tell you, I don't have a really good book because it's changing so quickly. However, I do have a couple of good websites for you where I think you can read up about some really cool things. One for sure is the website called the Gutenberg Times. And the person who runs that is Birgit Polly Hawk. She is a very active member of the WordPress community. It's an awesome website. It has things that are both on a developer level and a content creator level. So depending upon where you're at in the community, lots of good resources. She also has a regular podcast on there and a web series too. So really cool things you can pick up for that particular website. Other person I would for sure give a shout out to, I mentioned it before, is Bud Kraus. Bud is always doing stuff in the block editor. He's got just some really great presentations and demos on his site. Makes it super easy to learn things. So I would for sure check out his site as well. And I'll give you some links to, again, some of this so you can have it afterwards and find these things.
Great. I pasted in Gutenberg Times and Joy of WP. So
cool.
But yeah, that'd be great.